The station hummed softly as the sleek spaceship docked, its engines winding down after a long journey through deep space. For Captain Leo Hartley, it had been just another routine mission: deliver supplies to an outer colony and return. Nothing extraordinary. He had grown used to the quiet, the isolation, the endless days spent drifting through the stars. But today, something was different. As Leo stepped out of the airlock and onto the station's docking bay, he noticed a figure waiting in the shadows, watching him with an intensity that immediately made him pause. It was a woman, but not just any woman. His heart skipped a beat as recognition surged through him. Ilara. Leo's voice was a mix of disbelief and wonder. She stepped into the light, her long silver hair catching the glow of the station's artificial sun. Her deep violet eyes, the ones he had often dreamed of, met his gaze. She smiled, warm, knowing, and yet there was something more. She hadn't aged a day since their last meeting. How was that possible? He had assumed he'd never see her again. Ilara, Leo repeated, his voice steadier now. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. Without a word, she stepped forward, her arms opening in an invitation. Leo hesitated for a moment, confused, then the distance between them closed as if pulled by some invisible force. Ilara embraced him, the soft scent of her presence familiar and comforting, like a memory he hadn't realized he was holding onto. I never thought our paths would meet again, Ilara whispered into his ear, her voice low and full of emotion. Leo pulled back, searching her face. It was clear that the years had not erased the connection between them. They had once been close, very close, during a mission years ago. She had been the lead diplomat of an alien species, and he had been tasked with helping to negotiate peace between her people and a war-torn civilization. Their partnership had been both professional and personal, but after the mission, Ilara had disappeared, leaving him with unanswered questions. He hadn't seen her since. Why are you here, Ilara? Leo asked, his curiosity piqued. What happened to you? What's going on? Ilara took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room as if she were weighing her words carefully. I've come on an important mission, she began, her tone shifting from warmth to seriousness. Something's happening in the galaxy. A storm is brewing, and it's going to affect everyone. I need your help, Leo. There's no one else I trust more than you. Leo frowned, the weight of her words sinking in. There was more to this reunion than just a simple coincidence. What kind of storm? The kind that could tear the galaxy apart, she said, her eyes locking with his. But that's not the most urgent matter. You're a key part of what's coming next. Leo's heart raced as he processed her words. There was a sense of urgency in her voice, a tension he hadn't heard from her before. He had no idea what kind of trouble Ilara had gotten herself into, but one thing was clear. His world was about to change. Leo led Ilara through the quiet hallways of the space station, his mind racing. She had just told him that the galaxy was on the brink of something terrible. But it was her last words, "You're a key part of what's coming next," that echoed in his thoughts. As they reached a small room with a wide window looking out at the stars, Ilara turned to him. "You probably have a lot of questions," she said, her voice soft but serious. Leo nodded. "Yeah, I don't even know where to start. It's been years. You vanished without a trace after that mission." Ilara smiled faintly. "I know. I'm sorry about that, Leo. But there was something I had to do, something I couldn't tell you." Leo raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Ilara's eyes looked away, as if she were gathering her thoughts. She moved to the window, staring out at the endless blackness of space. "I was part of something bigger than I realized. The peace mission we worked on, it wasn't just about stopping a war. It was about securing something ancient, something powerful." Leo stepped closer, trying to piece it all together. "What kind of power?" Ilara turned back to him, her face serious. "My people, the Varethians, have a long history. We've been around for thousands of years, but there's something in our past, something hidden, and your bloodline is connected to it. Leo felt his chest tighten. My bloodline. She nodded. Yes. You see, Leo, your ancestors were not just humans. They were part of a group that helped shape the galaxy long before anyone ever knew about Earth. There was an ancient race, powerful beyond measure, and they left behind a legacy. You are a descendant of them. Leo shook his head, unable to fully grasp what she was saying. That's impossible. I'm just a human. I was born on Earth. Ilara placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression gentle but firm. I know it sounds unbelievable, but it's true. The artifacts we found during that peace mission, they were part of a key that only certain bloodlines could unlock, and yours is one of them. Leo took a step back, his mind racing. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, a pilot, a captain, nothing special. He had never imagined that his family had some connection to an ancient power. Why didn't you tell me this before? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Ilara sighed, her eyes filled with regret. At the time, I didn't fully understand what it all meant. I only knew that you were important. But I had to leave, Leo. My people didn't want the truth to get out. They thought it was too dangerous, that it would cause chaos. But now, Leo asked, his voice sharper than before. What changed? The situation has grown more urgent, Ilara said. There's a group out there, a faction who knows about your lineage, and they will stop at nothing to find you. They want to control what your ancestors left behind. Leo's stomach churned. And you want me to help stop them? Ilara nodded. Yes, but not just stop them. We need to understand what they're after and why they think they can control it. Only then can we prevent them from taking over everything. Leo stood there, staring at the stars. His life, which had once been simple, was now tangled in something far bigger than he could ever have imagined. One thing was certain. He couldn't turn back now. The small room felt colder now, the weight of Ilara's words hanging in the air like an unspoken storm. Leo sat down, his hands resting on the table in front of him. He was trying to process everything, his lineage, the ancient race, and now the threat of this mysterious faction. It all seemed too much for one person to bear. Tell me more, Ilara, Leo said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. You said there's a crisis. What's really going on? Ilara took a deep breath before answering, her gaze serious and unwavering. The galaxy is on the brink of war again, but this time, it's not just about planets fighting over territory. It's something much worse. She paused, letting the gravity of her words settle between them. A group of extremists, who call themselves the Shadow Council, have been gathering power in the shadows. They want control of the ancient technology that was left behind by the original race, the one connected to your bloodline. Leo frowned. And they think I have access to it. Ilara nodded. Yes. Your ancestors were part of a council of galactic leaders who sealed away this power centuries ago. The Shadow Council believes that unlocking the secrets of your bloodline will give them the key to access that power, and if they succeed, they will control the galaxy. They want to use it for their own gain. Leo felt his stomach drop. So it's not just about stopping a war. It's about stopping a war that could destroy everything. Exactly, Ilara replied. The Shadow Council is manipulating both sides of the war that has been brewing for years. They want to ignite conflict on a galactic scale, and in the chaos, they will move in and seize control. They believe that with the ancient power, they can reshape the galaxy as they see fit. Leo stood up, his mind racing. And what do we do? How do we stop them? Ilara's eyes softened, but there was still a sense of urgency in her voice. We need to find out where the Shadow Council is hiding and uncover what they know. They've been operating in the shadows for years, pulling strings, gathering information. They've already made moves that could tip the balance of power in their favor. Leo's thoughts turned to the Varethians. You said your people had knowledge about this, but why didn't you do something sooner? Why wait until now? Ilara's expression darkened. We've been watching, waiting for the right time. But the Shadow Council has been more elusive than we thought. We couldn't risk drawing attention to ourselves too early. But now, it's too late to wait any longer. Leo clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. So we move fast. We can't let them get the upper hand. Ilara's eyes gleamed with admiration. Exactly. And that's why I came to you, Leo. You're not just any pilot or captain. Your bloodline is the key to understanding how this power works. You may not realize it yet, but you have a part to play in all of this, and I'm going to help you every step of the way. Leo's heart raced. He was no longer just a man caught up in a routine mission. He was now part of something much larger, something that could determine the fate of the entire galaxy, and he knew that there was no turning back. Let's do this, Leo said, his voice firm and determined. We'll stop them before it's too late. Ilara smiled. Together, we will. As they made their plans, Leo felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy was in their hands now, and they had to move quickly if they hoped to save it. Leo paced back and forth in the small room they had secured on the station. His mind was spinning with everything Ilara had told him. The Shadow Council, the ancient power, his bloodline. It was a lot to take in. But there was something else gnawing at him, something deeper that he couldn't shake. Something doesn't feel right, Leo muttered to himself. Ilara, sitting at the table nearby, looked up. Her expression was calm, but she could tell that something was troubling him. She stood up and walked over to him. What's wrong? Leo stopped pacing and turned to face her. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. Ever since you showed up, I felt this strange connection. Like there's more to this than just the mission. Do you feel it too? Ilara studied him for a moment, her violet eyes thoughtful. Then, she nodded slowly. I felt it too, Leo. When I first saw you, it was like time had stopped. Like we were meant to meet again. Leo frowned. He had known Ilara for years, but this was different. There was a closeness between them now that went beyond friendship or partnership. It was as if their fates were intertwined in ways neither of them fully understood. I don't know what it means, Leo continued, but something about this feels familiar, like I've been here before. Ilara's gaze softened. She stepped closer to him, her voice gentle but serious. You have, Leo. In a way, you have. Your bloodline is more than just a connection to the past. It's also tied to me, and to my people. When we first worked together, there was something we couldn't quite explain. Something we couldn't put into words. Leo looked at her, confused. What are you saying? Ilara paused, choosing her words carefully. You're not just a descendant of the ancient race. There's a deeper bond between our people, my ancestors and yours. They were connected, not just through power, but through something even more powerful. A bond that goes beyond space and time, and that bond is still alive in you. Leo's heart raced as her words sank in. So, what does that mean for us? For me? Ilara took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. It means that you have a part to play in the future of both our peoples. Your bloodline carries the potential to unlock something more than just ancient power. It's the key to understanding everything, what the Shadow Council wants, and how to stop them. Leo's mind was spinning. He had never thought of himself as special, just an ordinary captain in an extraordinary galaxy. But now, everything had changed. He was no longer just a bystander in this conflict. He was part of it, maybe the most important part. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Leo admitted, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Ilara placed a hand on his arm, her touch reassuring. You are, Leo. You've always been ready. You just didn't know it. Leo looked into her eyes, searching for answers, but all he found was a deep trust and understanding. He didn't fully grasp the weight of what Ilara was saying, but something inside him told him she was right. He did have a role to play, and he couldn't back out now. "We'll figure this out," Leo said, his voice more determined than before. "Together." Ilara smiled, a sense of calm washing over her. "Yes, together. We'll stop the Shadow Council, and we'll make sure the galaxy stays safe. But first, we need to uncover the truth about your bloodline, and what it really means." As Leo nodded, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of destiny pulling him forward. The connection between them, the ancient power, and the galaxy's future, it was all coming together. And no matter how uncertain the path ahead seemed, Leo knew one thing for sure: he wasn't alone in this fight. The room was quiet as Leo sat beside Ilara, staring at the ancient texts she had gathered. They were spread out on a table in front of them: old maps, strange symbols, and ancient writings that seemed to tell a story neither of them fully understood. Ilara had explained that these artifacts held the key to unlocking the mystery of Leo's bloodline, but the more they examined them, the more questions arose. This makes no sense," Leo muttered, his finger tracing over one of the symbols. "These writings are unlike anything I've ever seen before." Ilara leaned over his shoulder, her violet eyes scanning the pages. "I know. My people have studied these for centuries. They were passed down through generations of Varathians, but even we don't fully understand them. These texts are part of a larger puzzle, a puzzle that has been waiting to be solved." Leo furrowed his brow. "So, what do we do now? How do we figure it out?" Ilara sighed and leaned back in her chair, thinking. "We have to decode them. Each symbol, each line of text, holds a piece of the truth, and we know that the answers are here. But there's a problem." Leo looked up, sensing her hesitation. "What's the problem?" "The Shadow Council," Ilara said, her voice lowering. "They've been after these texts for years. They know that they are the key to unlocking the power of the ancient race. If they get their hands on this, they'll have everything they need to control the galaxy." Leo felt a chill run down his spine. The urgency of the situation was growing clearer with each passing moment. "So we have to find the rest of these texts before they do." Ilara nodded. "Exactly. These are only fragments of the full knowledge. There's a hidden location, an ancient archive that holds the complete records. It's where the original race kept their secrets, and it's been hidden for centuries. My people have been searching for it, but it's nearly impossible to find." Leo stood up, his mind racing. "And you think I'm the key to finding it?" Ilara's gaze was unwavering. "Yes, your bloodline is tied to that location. The ancient race chose your ancestors to protect it, and now it's your turn to finish what they started." Leo stared at her, still processing what she had just said. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders. He had never asked for this, never imagined he would be part of something so important. But here he was, with a galaxy's future in his hands. "Where do we start?" Leo asked, trying to shake off the doubt creeping into his mind. Ilara smiled. "We start by following the clues in these texts. They will lead us to the archive. But we have to be careful. The Shadow Council is already looking for us. They know we're close." Leo nodded, determination hardening in his chest. "Then we won't let them get to it first." As they gathered the texts and prepared to leave, Leo felt a strange sense of purpose growing inside him. This wasn't just about stopping a war anymore. It was about protecting something far older, something that could change the fate of the galaxy forever. Ilara stood beside him, her presence comforting. "We'll find the archive. Together. And we'll stop the Shadow Council." Leo nodded once more, his resolve unshaken. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he wasn't facing them alone. The dim lights of the station flickered as Leo and Ilara boarded the small transport ship. The hum of the engines was the only sound in the quiet cabin, and Leo's mind raced as he glanced out at the stars. It felt like they were about to embark on something far bigger than he had ever imagined. "We're really doing this," Leo said, his voice quiet but steady. Ilara, seated beside him, nodded. "Yes, we are. This is just the beginning. The path ahead won't be easy, but we have no choice. We have to find the archive before the Shadow Council does. Leo felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had always been good at handling missions, but this was different. It wasn't just a mission anymore. It was about the fate of the galaxy. He glanced at Ilara. She seemed calm, but he knew she was feeling the weight of the journey as much as he was. Her eyes were focused on the star charts on the screen, studying the route ahead. "How much further is it?" Leo asked, his fingers lightly tapping the controls. "Not far," Ilara replied. "We have to pass through the Argon Belt first. It's a dangerous area, full of asteroid fields and scattered debris. But once we clear that, we'll be close." Leo nodded. He had flown through dangerous space regions before, but the Argon Belt had a reputation for being particularly treacherous. He wasn't worried about his flying skills, but the thought of the Shadow Council closing in on them kept him on edge. As they entered the belt, the stars around them flickered and shifted, the asteroid fields appearing like jagged shadows in the distance. Leo expertly navigated through the maze of rocks, his eyes constantly scanning the controls and the view outside. It wasn't long before the ship was surrounded by the looming shapes of large asteroids, the path ahead narrowing with each passing second. "This is where we need to be careful," Leo murmured. "One wrong move, and we could get caught in the debris." Ilara's voice was calm but filled with focus. "We can't afford any mistakes, Leo. The Shadow Council won't be far behind. They won't let us reach the archive without a fight." Leo gritted his teeth, his hands steady on the controls. He couldn't let his guard down. Not now. As the ship weaved between the massive asteroids, he felt the thrill of the challenge mixed with the pressure of the mission. Every move counted. The minutes dragged on as they carefully navigated the belt. Just when Leo thought they might have made it through unscathed, a sudden warning flashed on the control panel. His heart skipped a beat. "Ilara, look at this," he said, his voice tense. Ilara quickly leaned over to see the readout. The signal was faint, but it was unmistakable. A ship was approaching. "It's them," Ilara whispered. "The Shadow Council." Leo's grip tightened on the controls as he pushed the ship into overdrive, the engines roaring as they sped toward the end of the belt. They had to lose them. Fast. But even as they pushed forward, Leo knew one thing for sure. The real challenge had only just begun. The ship's engines roared as Leo pushed the controls to their limit, sending them careening through the last stretch of the Argon Belt. The massive asteroids seemed to close in around them, their jagged surfaces a constant threat to the fragile hull of the transport. Sweat beaded on Leo's forehead as he fought to keep the ship steady, his mind focused on the narrow escape ahead. "Ilara, hold on," Leo shouted, his eyes scanning the display for any sign of an incoming strike. Ilara, her face a picture of concentration, was already adjusting the ship's shields. "We're not out of the belt yet. There's a clear path ahead, but they're gaining on us." Leo could see the flashing red icon on the screen. The Shadow Council ship was getting closer, closing the gap with every passing second. They had no time to waste. His hands moved quickly over the controls, and he expertly navigated the ship between two massive asteroids, the engines whining as they pushed through the narrow gap. The ship shuddered, but Leo held the course, barely missing the spinning rock to their right. "We're going to lose them," Leo muttered, frustration rising in his chest. "We can't outrun them forever." "Not if we take the shortcut," Ilara said, a sharp edge to her voice. "There's a hidden route, just past the next cluster of asteroids. It'll get us out of the belt and into open space, but it's risky." Leo didn't hesitate. "We don't have a choice. Show me." Ilara quickly accessed the ship's map and highlighted a path just ahead. "Follow that route exactly. The last thing we need is to get caught in the wrong part of the belt." Without another word, Leo veered the ship to the right, dodging a group of smaller asteroids that threatened to collide with them. His eyes were locked on the new path ahead, his mind calculating each move in real time. The tension was palpable. The ship shuddered again as a warning flashed on the control panel. Someone had fired. A burst of energy crackled past them, missing by mere inches. "Hold on," Leo shouted, pulling the ship sharply to the left to avoid another shot. The ship swerved wildly, narrowly missing an asteroid as it shot past them. Leo's heart pounded in his chest. "Ilara, we need to get out of here now," he yelled. Ilara was already preparing the ship's emergency thrusters, but she wasn't looking at the controls. Her gaze was fixed on the approaching ship. "They're not just chasing us," she said, her voice low. "They want us dead. We're not dealing with a normal military pursuit." Leo's pulse quickened as they entered the shortcut, an extremely narrow gap between two massive asteroids that hadn't been charted in years. The ship's hull scraped against the rough edges of the rocks, sending sparks flying. "Almost there," Ilara called out, her voice tense with hope. The sound of the Shadow Council ship's engines grew louder behind them, but the distance was widening. Leo's hands tightened on the controls as he fought to maintain speed through the maze of floating rocks. Every second felt like a lifetime. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the ship burst through the gap and into open space. The calm of the void was a welcome relief, but Leo didn't slow down. "We lost them. For now," he said, catching his breath. Ilara's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her expression remained serious. "They'll be back. They won't give up that easily." Leo nodded, his thoughts racing. He had known the Shadow Council wouldn't stop, but now he understood the depth of their determination. He couldn't let his guard down, not for a second. "We've got to keep moving," Leo said, his voice resolute. "The archive is still out there, and we're not going to let them find it first." Ilara met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of respect and worry. "Agreed. We're in this together." As the ship sped toward their next destination, Leo couldn't shake the feeling that they were headed into even more danger. But one thing was certain: whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with Ilara by his side. The stars outside the ship blurred as Leo pushed the throttle forward, the sleek vessel cutting through space with increasing speed. They were deep into uncharted territory now, far from the safety of known systems. The map Ilara had provided showed a small, hidden planet, a place rumored to hold the key to the ancient archive they were searching for. "We're close," Ilara said, her voice steady, but there was a trace of uncertainty in her eyes. "This planet, it's been lost to most star maps for centuries. It's not a place you just stumble upon." Leo glanced at her. "But we found it." "We did," Ilara said, nodding. "But we're not the only ones looking for it." The thought made Leo's stomach twist. Even though they had managed to escape the Shadow Council in the Argon Belt, Leo knew they couldn't outrun them forever. The Shadow Council was relentless, and they would stop at nothing to get to the ancient power hidden on this planet. Leo adjusted the ship's course, his hands gripping the controls as they neared the planet. It was small, barely visible against the black backdrop of space. Its surface was mostly covered in thick clouds, with only a few patches of land visible below. "How are we going to land?" Leo asked, eyeing the thick atmosphere. "The scans are showing heavy turbulence down there. There's a hidden entrance to the surface," Ilara explained. "It's well hidden, even from scanners. We'll have to go in low and keep our shields at full power. Any disturbance could alert the Shadow Council." Leo nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We'll do it." As the ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, the turbulence became stronger. The ship shuddered under the force, and the warning lights flickered as the shields absorbed the impact of the storm. Leo's grip tightened on the controls, every nerve in his body focused on keeping the ship steady. "Ilara, how much further?" he asked, sweat trickling down his face. "Not far now," she said, her voice calm, though Leo could tell she was as tense as he was. "Just stay focused." The ship dipped through the clouds, and soon a small hidden valley appeared below them. It was surrounded by jagged cliffs, almost invisible from space. But there, nestled between the rocks, was a narrow opening in the ground. There, Ilara pointed, her voice filled with relief. That's the entrance. Leo adjusted the ship's altitude and aimed for the opening. As they drew closer, the storm intensified, but Leo kept his attention locked on the entrance. With a sharp maneuver, he guided the ship into the narrow gap. The ship rocked as they entered the underground cave. Inside, it was eerily quiet, and the turbulence stopped immediately. The air was still, the walls lined with ancient markings, glowing faintly with a blue light. "We're here," Ilara whispered, awe in her voice. Leo looked around. The cave seemed endless, stretching into the unknown. He couldn't shake the feeling that they had just stepped into a place untouched by time, where the secrets of the past were waiting. But as they moved further into the cave, Leo knew that the Shadow Council wouldn't be far behind. They were too close to the power of the ancient race now, too close to the truth. "We have to find it," Leo said, his voice steady despite the growing tension. "We can't let them beat us to it." Ilara nodded, determination in her eyes. "No matter what comes next, we're doing this. Together." As they pressed forward, the sound of their footsteps echoed through the vast cavern, the weight of their mission heavier than ever. Leo's boots echoed through the ancient cave as he and Ilara walked deeper into the darkness. The faint blue glow of the walls illuminated their path, casting strange, shifting shadows around them. The air was cool, thick with the scent of age and mystery. It was a place that hadn't felt the touch of time in centuries, maybe longer. "Do you think we're the first ones to come here in all this time?" Leo asked, his voice quiet but filled with wonder. Ilara glanced around, her expression unreadable. "I don't know. It feels like we're walking through a dream. But I'm sure the Shadow Council knows about this place. They've been searching for it for years. We have to be careful." Leo nodded. He had felt the weight of their mission since they first set foot on this planet, but it was heavier now. There was something about the cave, an energy in the air that made him feel both small and significant at the same time. It was as though the ancient power Ilara had spoken of was just within reach, waiting to reveal itself. They continued their journey, moving further into the heart of the cave. The walls seemed to shift as they passed, the markings glowing brighter in response to their presence. It was almost as if the cave itself was alive, aware of their intrusion. "I'm starting to think this isn't just a hiding place," Leo said, his gaze drawn to the glowing markings. "This place is. It's alive." Ilara stopped in her tracks, her eyes narrowing as she studied the symbols. "It's not just a place. It's a gateway. This cave, these markings, they're part of something much bigger, something older." A shiver ran down Leo's spine as he turned to look at Ilara. "A gateway to what?" Ilara hesitated, her expression conflicted. "I don't know, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." As they walked on, the glow of the cave intensified, filling the space with a soft, almost comforting light. It was then that they saw it, an enormous chamber ahead, its entrance framed by a massive stone arch. Beyond it lay something that made Leo's heart race, a huge, intricate structure, covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen along the walls. It was a towering artifact, its purpose unclear but unmistakably powerful. Ilara's breath caught in her throat as she stepped forward. "This is it, the heart of the archive." Leo approached cautiously, his eyes scanning the structure. He could feel the pulse of energy coming from it, and he knew that whatever secrets it held, they were beyond anything he had ever imagined. But just as he took a step closer, a sound broke the silence. A low hum, barely perceptible but unmistakable. It was coming from the artifact. "Ilara, do you hear that?" Leo asked, his voice tense. Ilara's eyes widened. "It's starting. The artifact is waking up. We've activated it." The chamber seemed to pulse with life, the walls vibrating as the artifact's hum grew louder. Leo felt his pulse quicken. They had come so far, and now they were on the brink of uncovering something monumental. But even as the artifact began to respond to their presence, Leo couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. "They're here," Ilara said, her voice filled with fear. Leo turned to look at her, just as the distant roar of engines reached their ears. The Shadow Council had found them. The distant roar of engines echoed through the cave, growing louder with every passing second. Leo's heart pounded in his chest as he turned to face the glowing artifact. The chamber around them seemed to tremble, the air thick with anticipation. "Ilara," Leo said, his voice steady but tense. "We don't have much time." "I know," Ilara replied, her face pale as she looked around, searching for any sign of their pursuers. "The Shadow Council will be here soon. We can't let them take this." Leo's gaze shifted back to the artifact. The hum had grown louder, resonating with a strange, almost hypnotic rhythm. It was alive, and it was waiting for something. But what? He didn't have the answers, only the instinct to act. "Ilara, do you think we can use it?" Leo asked, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. She stepped forward, her fingers grazing the glowing symbols etched into the surface of the artifact. "I'm not sure, but it's our only chance." Before Leo could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the cave, followed by the unmistakable hum of energy weapons charging. The Shadow Council was close, too close. "We need to hurry," Leo shouted, stepping toward the artifact with determination. Suddenly, a beam of bright light shot through the darkness, striking the far wall of the cave. Leo spun around, his heart sinking as the familiar figures of the Shadow Council emerged from the shadows. Their leader, a tall figure in black armor, stepped forward, his cold eyes locking onto Leo and Ilara. "You're too late," the leader said, his voice low and menacing. "This artifact belongs to the Council. Hand it over." Leo stood his ground, his fists clenched. "You'll have to pry it from our cold, dead hands." The Shadow Council leader sneered. "I'd be happy to oblige." With a sudden motion, the leader raised his hand, and a series of energy blasts erupted toward Leo and Ilara. Leo dove to the side, pulling Ilara with him as the cave erupted in light. The blasts hit the walls, sending rocks crashing to the ground, but the two of them barely avoided the attack. "Ilara," Leo shouted, "we have to activate it. Now." Ilara nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but also a fierce determination. She reached out, her fingers brushing the symbols on the artifact. As her touch made contact, the hum of the chamber grew louder, vibrating through the floor beneath them. The glowing symbols shifted, rearranging themselves into new patterns. The artifact's core began to glow brighter, emitting an energy so powerful that the air itself seemed to bend. "Leo, I think it's working," Ilara gasped. The Shadow Council leader's eyes widened in surprise as the energy from the artifact surged, knocking him and his soldiers back. Leo watched, stunned, as the power from the artifact spread through the chamber, forming a protective barrier around them. The Shadow Council soldiers tried to break through, but the barrier held strong, keeping them at bay. This is impossible," the leader shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. Leo took a deep breath, the weight of their success sinking in. They had activated the artifact, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like they had the upper hand. But the battle was far from over. The Shadow Council would regroup, and this wouldn't be the last time they'd come for the artifact. Leo turned to Ilara, his expression resolute. "We've won this battle," he said, his voice firm. "But the war is just beginning." Ilara nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We won't stop. Not until we protect this power and uncover its secrets." As the Shadow Council retreated into the shadows, Leo and Ilara stood together, ready for whatever came next. They knew the journey wasn't over. The artifact had revealed a fraction of its power, and there were still many secrets to uncover. But together, they were ready for the challenges ahead.